Hey everyone. Hey Mike. Poppy, g'day. Dan, g'day. Stephen, howdy. Craig, good to see you. Thomas, hello. Kevin, g'day. What's up everyone? I've had, not going to say I've lost any sleep, but I've wasted quite a lot of time. Hey John. Stressing about live stream. Well, not exactly stressing, but trying to get to the bottom of how it all works. There's a brand new system in place. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that or aware of that to live stream. The old classic system is being superseded in YouTube Studio for the new system right across the board, and in live stream in particular. It really needs to be set up on the device that you're going to stream on. So if you're streaming with a webcam from your desktop, then you need to set it up on that. If you're streaming with, hey Paddy, Fridge Martin, g'day. Hope you're doing all right. Thinking about you down there in the fires. If you're streaming on tablet, it needs to be set up on that. If you're streaming on telephone, you need to have it set up on that. But they don't all talk to each other, and you can't get all the same settings on each thing. So before, I was setting up on the telephone that I was streaming on, and then I was going to the desktop and putting in the settings that I wanted so that it was dialed up and working. Now I can't do that. So I'm struggling a bit with it. I'm also a bit sick of the whole amateur hour thing. Last week was a bit ridiculous. So I've gone and I've been experimenting. I've gone and bought a Samsung tablet, or got one on the drip feed or whatever. And this is pretty good. And I think I'm going to just stream straight from this, I think is the best way to do it. So I need either a GoPro connector or some sort of a bracket for it so that I can stream with it. It's got a pretty good camera and it's got a big screen so I can actually see what people are saying. So that's the idea. I've been trying to stream with this, which is really nice quality image, and it works. But if you stream through the GoPro software, you get lag, and that's a bit of a cow. Because you get double lag, because I'm looking at the comments at the same time you're looking at, which gives me a lag, and by the time I respond to them, that gives me another lag. So that's frustrating. There's no way to set the latency like there is on the desktop, which there isn't on the phone or the tablet. So for now, I'm using the old system because there's a revert back button, but I'm not sure how long that's going to last, and really no one's particularly happy with it. So that's my whinge about YouTube. It's a lot of refinement that we didn't really need, and it's frustrating because it doesn't really work anymore. So there we go. Anyway, we got that out of our system a bit. It's a bit of a pain, actually. It really annoys me. I'd like to be able to stream with this because this is fantastic, but I can't connect this through my tablet to live stream and use this as a webcam. I can probably do it through my desktop, but my desktop's in the other room and it's just complicated. So we will get this sorted. Anyway, Glad you dressed, Paddy. Hi, JB. Thanks for the update, Fred. You've been worried about you. Rustinox, g'day. Yeah, I've got no idea how it works either, and this is number 65 or something like that. I've got no idea at all. Mike, are you still there? You could just type more slowly, that's right. Maybe if we drink more, everything will seem real time. Tommy Gun Machining, welcome. Yeah, anyway, I don't have an answer yet. I hope in the next month or within the next month, which is the time frame I've allowed myself, it's going to be less frustrating and it's going to work better. I'm not convinced. Maddie's Workshop, good day. A really nice breakfast sherry. Don't know whether you found a really nice breakfast sherry or whether you found a very nice breakfast sherry. Yeah, it sounds like a plan. G'day, John Bear. So, someone, Poppy. Breakfast sherry sounds like a supplement to something, and breakfast sherry sounds like that's what you have. Anyway, g'day, Cam. This is a piston. Work in progress, of course. All the info you've got. Yeah, breakfast sherry is just double check next time, Paddy, that you haven't got that tie on upside down. That'd be nothing. There's nothing worse. Anyway, this is the piston. It's the casting. I've got this far. It's got a gudgeon in it. It's machined sort of down to width. It's been heat treated again because we've had some problems with it being hard. I'm not sure it was properly heat treated the first couple of times, to be honest. We've got a hole somewhere through the centre, which I'm really impressed about. That always impresses me. And it's awesome because it's a very difficult thing to do because you can't see inside there. I actually did upside down the rotary table in the end, and I got this line somewhere across the middle or perpendicular to the lugs, and it's in the centre this way. So hopefully that's pretty good. Pick and sound, is everyone there? Did you probably could try reloading. Maybe, I don't know. I really don't have an answer to that, and I'm sorry. I've got both pick and sound, but I'm right here, so that doesn't work. Hi, David. So this is still got to be 2 millimeters smaller on the outside, and I'm going to make that's too much information. I'm going to make a boss to fit that over, and then a D-bolt to go on the gudgeon to screw it on. With a tapped hole in the boss, so that this runs nice and true and we can machine all of the outside at once. So that's the idea, to machine that down to, I think it wants probably another 100th hour off it, something like that. But I can't do anything until I've bored the cylinder, so we're just doing this while we're waiting for a milling machine. Super glue I don't think is heavy enough. I think it's going to require a bit more effort than that. So I might make a proper bolt to hold it down, because I'm reluctant to rely on this, and you don't need much run out on the end before it won't work. So that's the way I'm going to do it. Yeah, in the lathe I'll set this up with a boss just set a boss up in the 3-jaw chuck, a piece of steel, machine it, and I'll use an eye bolt in the center with the gudgeon pin through it to screw it on, and then I'll be able to machine the outside and the rings and everything. So still needs a little bit more off it. I drilled the gudgeon on the rotary table. It seemed to be the best way to do it. I had thought originally to clamp it down this way on the table and drill through it, but you can't see where the lugs are in the center, which is a casting feature. So that didn't work. Cam really thanks heaps for that on the pattern making. It's the quality of the patterns, yeah, and it's the discrepancies in the patterns that give me the most grief, to be honest. It's a bit of a job. Any joy on the use of a milling machine to knock the bore through? No, not yet. Hopefully we will have it bored maybe this weekend. It's going to be very, very soon. And as soon as I can get it bored, I can get this in. We can start thinking in a bit more depth about the conrod. This is a 3D printed one. Give you some sort of an idea. But we need to check clearances here and all those sort of things before we sort of commit to any of that. Dennis Nolan, g'day. It's good to see you. Hope you're doing okay. David, Loctite would probably work for it too. It's probably plenty good enough. Might be easy to bolt it on and take it off, because the other thing is to get this to fit. The engine's too big to hold up and check diameters and fits. So, oh crap. Sorry about the bang. So some sort of a system that I can screw it on and screw it off and check it will be really nice, I think. And whether that actually happens, but that's the theory. Anyway, that's the theory behind it, and that's probably the most secure and best way to do it. There's no relief this way or anything like that, and there's not even any real retaining for the gudgeon. It's just a pin through with, probably I'm going to put nylon ends in it, or plastic ends anyway, to stop it scratching up the bore and stop it moving in and out. I think that's probably the easiest and quickest way to do that. Piece of 4140 arrived today. My usual gripe about material suppliers. Now we're finished with YouTube. This is all right and it's nice, but I did request him to cut 50mm off the end of it to make a camshaft out of. And he obviously didn't get the note or didn't bother or something, because this has been about 2 weeks coming, and it's all in one piece. I don't feel particularly like chopping the end off that with the hacksaw, so we'll try parting it, and if we don't have any luck with our new cross slide, we're probably going to do okay with that. But it's pretty solid, and it's 4140, so if we can part this much off, we'll make a camshaft out of that with the camshaft gear on it. That's another job. No, this one's not Man Cave. He's pretty helpful, and he always cuts. He's pretty useful, actually. If you ask him to cut it into lengths, a certain length, he's pretty accurate and pretty reliable. This was actually a hot rod dude, I think, in Tasmania, way up in the Tyne Valley in northeast Tasmania, which accounts for the 2 weeks postage. It's got to go through Fingal and then St Helens and then probably Launceston and then back to, and it's probably road freight up the side, and it's probably run through a bushfire zone and had to stop in a truck for a week. So this guy's all right, and he's only supplier of 4140 of any size on the internet, but on eBay, but he didn't cut it to length. Whether he just didn't see the length, see the note, or whether it's just something he didn't want to do. But I did ask him to cut a little bit shorter. Piston rings, cast iron rings. I'll probably make cast iron rings. I've done that before. That's not a particularly difficult thing. It's a bit harder on small sizes because you've got to be a bit more fussy about ring gaps. If you've got something that's 4 or 5 inches diameter, it's not so bad because of your expansion. About 1/1000 inch diameter, and this is inch, and it's getting pretty fussy. So I will make rings, but there's a few ways to do that, and we'll talk about that as we go. Man Cave's got 12L14 now. I noticed. Hit him up because I got a heap from him and it was pretty competitive. How much does this weigh? About maybe 3 kilograms, something like that. 6 pounds. How hard is it? How hard is which, John? How hard is this? It's between 30 and 36 degrees of an afternoon. It's probably pretty hard to cut off with a hacksaw. What did I pay for this? Wasn't expensive really. About $25 Australian, something like that, plus postage. I'll use it for something, but it'd be nice to have it a bit shorter. This here, 35, I guess it's probably not pre-hard. Let's find out. Everyone probably needs a set of these. Oh, it's probably harder than 35, I reckon. That's starting to grip, and that's 45. So I'm saying it's between 40 and 45 RC, something like that. Hi, Peter. What diameter do I need for the cam? About 32 millimeters, John. Conrod, fridge, excellent question. The Conrod, I believe, is probably going to be bronze. I've had a bit of a stuff up. I've not read the drawing properly after, somewhere between making patterns and doing the machining. I've not done a double take on the drawing and I've stuffed up. So I've made the... Let's get the engine over here and have a look. Whoa. I put this bush on here and shrunk it on, which is 4140, which is really nice job, and I'm really pleased about it. However, when I machined this, I didn't allow for a bush in the Conrod, and JB sent this, and we discovered that it's the same size without the bush as the Conrod is. So that's all right. So there's two ways we could deal with this. We could make this out of bronze and not bother putting a bush in it. That would probably work and probably be plenty good enough. Or we'd make it out of steel or something. It doesn't probably matter much what it is. And I could cut this off here and repolish it. However, wonder where the Allen key is. Oh, life's mysteries. Where the 2mm Allen key is most of the time. It's usually here somewhere. Let's unscrew this and slip the flywheel off without dropping the key. Craig asked the question about this key on the flywheel. It's all the grub screw does is hold down the key. So that's how that works. It's just a straight key in there. That takes some of the wobble out of it that you would find with a tapered key. Hey Darren, good to see you. John McMahon, good to see you too. And DKT first, g'day. These are hardness tester files by Supersan, which is sort of the industry standard, I guess. They're really good. They're Japanese. Hardness tester files. They're a lot cheaper than a hardness tester. They're probably not quite as accurate, but they give you a pretty good idea. They may not be cheap, but they're kind of awesome, actually. They're one of the tools that mostly I use every week. Anyway, if we slip this out, which it does actually slip out, which we're pretty impressed about. If we were to machine this down and re-polish it, which is what it really needs because I've stuffed up, this is a fairly difficult thing to set up on this center and machine. Not sure how you get around that. Probably if you made a bush with a couple of grub screws in it to hold it in and then set that up in the four jaw so this was on center, that might be the best way. The problem is that my little four jaw, I don't think has a hole in it that's that big. So what I'm going to find is that I'm not going to be able to offset it enough to machine this. So still thinking about that. Probably I could set it up in the mill and machine it with the boring head, but that sounds like a lot of stuffing around. So whether we leave it like this, which is a nice finish and all ready to go, and make the conrod to match, which is probably what I'm going to do, or whether I cut that off and polish it in the lathe and sort of say it's going to be plenty good enough. I'm not sure. Yeah, I've got a friend who can chop this off. Poppy, that's not a problem. I will. It's probably a good excuse to go and get this board. I'd like a decent chop saw, but it's not going to happen just yet. Kevin, that sounds about the right price. So, yeah, post a link here and hopefully someone will see it and it'll come up okay. I think 130, Craig, is about the going price for them. That's 130 Australian, about probably 90 or 80 US dollars you should be able to get them from. Dan, no real downside. Bronze is probably the best. A bronze rod is probably as good or as better, as good as excellent. Thanks, Craig. I think a bronze cod rod's probably a really good option. The only downside really is you've got to buy a piece of bronze, but that's probably not a big deal either. The other thing I could do if Marcus gets too busy to CNC machine one, which he'd offer to do, is to make a bronze casting and machine that. That's probably another option. Can't unfortunately make this solid on the end, which would be the easy way round, because you can't actually get this on here. It won't actually physically go together like that. It's got to be split. So we might try and set this up and see what sort of effort we can find, how we can get on with it. Angle grinder's messy and noisy. I've been sharpening tools for a friend, made some fly cutters and things this weekend, and I've got bench grinder dust everywhere. I've just been trying to clean up. John, that was the original intention. There's a bronze bush on the big end and the rest in steel, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen anyway. Good to see you, Rustin Knox. This thing, I would imagine, is going to do a maximum of about 400 RPM. I think anything faster than that's going to be a bit scary. Anyway, my stuff up, and I'm not real happy about that. But that is only a shrunk-on bush, so it's probably not going to be all that difficult to get off. And the finish on this was underneath was okay, but in a moment of craziness, I thought it was too small, so I'll put that piece on, which is about the right dimensions for the bush, actually. So we weren't far out to start with. I have a Dremel. I don't really like angle grinders as a tool. I'm not a big fan. I'm scared of them. I'm right up there with routers, actually. I'm not really a huge fan of angle grinders, so I'm probably not going to chop it with that. But anyway, that's the engine progress. It's sort of slowly happening. It's a pretty crazy project. Who else is making projects? Who's got stuff doing? Good video from Cam this last week about broaching press. That's a really good improvement to a little arbor press. The reason I don't have a bigger arbor press is because they're pretty useless things, and the middle out of them usually drops on my toe, and I'm really not impressed with that. But Cam's done quite a job on that, and he's made a pro tool that's pretty helpful, so we'll have to think about that. I'm going to ignore that comment about the micrometer, actually. Garden lifting jig for the slider. That sounds awesome. Yep. And a bandsaw from Craig. I've seen some of that. Mike's working on the Martin Evans engine. That's awesome. Kevin, how's progress on your little hit and miss engine? Tommy Gunn is almost done with power feed. That's awesome. I hope it works. I'm watching with interest. ER32 collet chuck and backing plate. That's quite a cool project too, Kevin. Oh, that's awesome. Maker exhibition at Monash the weekend after next. Who's going to that? Can you post a link to that, John? If you could, that'd be awesome. Not going to happen for me, but I'd like to get to one at some point. There's a lot of reading through plans. I got asked about an undertype engine today. Someone looking for a big stationary horizontal fire tube boiler engine, and back in the early years of the century through to about 1930, there were quite a few good English designs for undertype engines. Undertype engine being a locomotive boiler with the engine with the cylinders under the smoke box and the crank back under the boiler. Huge thanks on that. I'd like to get there at some point. I'm going to have a bit of a look and try and schedule that in. Fridge, no answer, but I did see that the locomotive's running, so we might have dodged a bullet on that one. So that's cool. Anyway, that's kind of what's happening here. Whole lot of nothing. Battle with YouTube. This is going ahead slowly. It's quite a project, though. This actually works, and we've had a couple of redesigns on the camshaft. Which we've actually the camshaft just so that everyone knows what it looks like is separate to the cam, and that's basically all it is. That's a 3D printed one, but we'll get that okay out of there. I can make it out of 2 pieces, but I'm just going to make it out of 1 and save some of the angst. It shouldn't be a huge deal, but it's only a fairly short piece, so that's what it's going to look like. We'll be having a look at that, John. Yeah, I was going to get that book out with the undertype engine, but it's not a big deal. I'll remember to do it at some point and get some drawings scanned. How am I going to machine the cam lobe? That's a really good question. I'm not sure if it's going to look like this or whether it's going to be a bit less lift or a bit more lift or anything else. We're going to have to get some valves in and sort of see how it looks. I'm probably going to just plot it out on the rotary table and mill it, I think, and clean it up with a file afterwards. So that's an interesting project. This one's 3D printed. It's handy for prototyping. I think this has probably got too much lift now. It's got about 532 lift, something like that. The other one I had about 110 thou, which was scaled off the drawing. And on a 9/16 valve, that's probably plenty. If we get too much oxygen in there, the thing's going to be impossible to slow down, and there's no governor on it. So probably we might go back to the other one, but we'll check it out first. Thanks, Dennis. It's kind of a pretty crazy project, but there you go. Oh, that's awesome, Fridge. There's a few older designs for undertype engines that are okay, but they're kind of dead weight. I mean, moving the thing around, this is big enough. Moving around a 5-inch boiler undertype is a crazy big job, and they're big engines. That's very true, Sticks. G'day. I'd like to go. I've been to the Monash Model Engineering Expo a couple of times. Usually the first I see of these is that Eccentric Engineering has been and got some pictures. If you follow him on Instagram or Facebook, it's a great thing. You probably should follow him. He has some pretty cool tools, and he posts pretty regularly, and there's always fun stuff to look at. That's Eccentric Engineering. He's in Melbourne. He makes the diamond tool holder, which I have one of, which is way too big for my machine now. Take care, Mike. Thanks for checking in. Talking about locos, let's have a look at them. If it looks like we've got time, so let's have a look. Here, box of bits. These are, we'll blow some of the dust off. These are a couple of O gauge locomotives. I've spent quite a lot of hours on these, and I probably should finish them. Let's move some stuff. I reckon I've seen the H locomotive cam at some point. These are a bit dusty, yes. Now, they're quite complex builds. In O gauge, anything's complex. It's watchmaking nearly. These have some problems. Basically physics. And the problems with the boiler. These are a methylated spirit fire tube boiler. I'm probably going to remake these boilers again for the third time. I think this is the second time that I've made them, and I'm going to have another go at it. Because this chimney needs to be extended as part of this pipe for the exhaust tube through the end. That's the first thing. And secondly, these pipes are much too big a diameter for this little engine, and you can't route them around between the wheel and the frame and up to the engine without running into some serious problems. So whether I drill this and this out and start again, the trouble is I'm going to have bits left inside the boiler, so I think I'm going to have to make 2 new boilers, and that's why I've been putting that off at this point. I would like the chimney to be part of the boiler and stick up here. I would also like this pipe. Oh, this is probably better to show on this one because I did actually manage to get this to clear on this one. I would like this pipe to clear some of this stuff a little bit better. This isn't bad here, but when we bend this round to go in the side of the engine, we discover that it's too big a diameter to solder in. So take care, Cam. It's good to see you. Is anyone still there? G'day, but anyone there? See you, Cam. Tough being back at work. Yeah. So they're little tank engines, and they're not too shabby really. I'm kind of pleased with the chassis, are good, and the smoke boxes are pretty nice really. Safety valve all works. They're just worm drive here with a little vertical wobbler engine, which is probably heaps good enough for them. But that's all watchmaking. And when you get into the engines and things like that, they tend to be... Things are pretty fussy, and there's the worm, which works on this gear here. I think you probably nearly see that. And that's got a shaft that runs between this cross member, which has a design issue, and the engine, which sits back here in the cab. And then there's a fair bit of tin plate and running boards and things like that to go on them. But they're little Edwardian or Victorian tank locomotives to a published design that was sort of published as a Christmas special in 1956, something like that, by LBSC. So I think I'm going to have to make new boilers, and from there we need to get these 2 engines running, and the rest is pretty much plain sailing. Paddy, the fire goes, the burner goes between the axles. There's a metho burner here and here really, and the tank sits here in the back underneath the cab. So hey David, good day. Good to see you. Anyway, they're not very big. I don't know if you noticed. The idea is that they're going to run with my Hornby O-gauge tin plate stock on a Hornby O-gauge track when I get it set up. I've got all those sort of things. I just don't really have room to set up a track. And at the price of timber, which isn't coming down anytime soon, building a baseboard that'll fold up and down, etc., 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 is getting pretty expensive. So I'm not sure when the track's going to happen, but probably at some point when I get some of these other projects done that are much more pressing and much more in the front of my mind, we'll get back onto these and we'll get them running, because it is quite a cool project. Regulator and a reversing gear. They have a little rotary valve on the back of the engine, which will give some sort of regulation, and it will also give forward and reverse. So that's how that works. Take care, John. Thanks for checking in. So O-gauge is quite a project. Gauge 1 locomotive is probably a much simpler thing, because these are really fiddly. The engines are going to be tiny. All the components are tiny. The safety valves are... These boilers have all been pressure tested and everything. It's just a pity that we're going to have to do them again. So safety valves are tiny. I think they've got an 1/8 ball in them, something like that. Proper working pop style safety valves. Not much information about this. The design is called Myrtle, after a London... Brighton is... No, that's not right. One of the very, very small, obscure London suburban railways anyway, from about 1880, 1890. The design's called Myrtle. That's what it was published as in Model Engineer, but it was only about 3 pages, and I'm one of these people who never ever do things easy. So we've got a good start on these, and I know where I've gone wrong. It's just a matter of making up a couple of 2 more boilers and starting work on the engine. And I've been reluctant to start work on the engine with my lathe and my milling machine in the condition they are, because this is pretty accurate little work. They're pretty sensitive. So this little engine, little vertical wobbler engine, it's going to need some patience to get it to run, to be honest. I built that little engine out the back of Shop Shed and Road, LBC Shop Shed and Road. I don't know if some of you might have seen the video on that. I sent it to a friend as a thank you. And that was hard enough to get running, but this is only about half that size. The wheels, Marty, yeah. The wheels are cast lead in a silicon mould with iron tyres. So yes, I cast the wheels here. So they were made from, and probably not the smartest way to do it, but they were made from a 3D printed pattern in a silicon mould. The front wheels and the drivers. So I won't say lead, it's 60-40 lead solder, so, or 50-50 or something, whichever one's a hard one. So hopefully they'll do the job. I don't think they're going to get hot enough to be a problem. If they are, we'll be back to the drawing board. I would think it's probably bit harder than Babbitt. Babbitt hasn't got much tin in it because it scores up bearings. So I would say that this lead here it's more like plumber's solder, something like that. Probably it's bad for you. I haven't been sucking these on the way to work or anything like that, so I think they'll be all right. And with a coat of paint on them, it's hard to know whether the paint or the lead's actually going to be more noxious. So zinc is probably an option too. I wanted to follow to some extent the drawings and the design of these, which was a 1950s Christmas projects for kids, which is a bit ambitious really, but they're quite a job. At some point I'll get back into them. There's a lot of fairly complex plate work. They're quite a long tank engine with a cab on them and a bunker on the back. He sticks, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Good point. Biro caps are supposed to be carcinogenic too, and every single person that I know chewed on biro caps, so there you go. Anyway, that's the update on those. Anyone else want to pull out some abandoned projects and ask about? Happy to do it while we're having a bit of a purification session. I confess up to not having actually finished stuff. I'm going to put these dear little locos away, and hopefully at some point you might see some progress on them now I've actually got the box out. Take care, Dennis. Good to see you. Chirpy's boiler. Progress on Chirpy's boiler. That's a really good one. Kevin, bit cheeky, but really good one. This one is finished except for the burner. This is a nice little boiler actually. It's a good design. I'm really pleased with this. He might have actually gone to bed, Paddy. I think he does that sometimes. These are nice little boilers. This one's pretty much finished and ready to ship. It needs a burner, and I've had a little bit of thought about that. Sometimes that's what you need, is to think about stuff. I find it helps me to stop for a week and think about stuff, and sometimes it's 6 months, but anyway, this one's pressure tested up. The other one's pressure tested up. I haven't finished this around. I've made all the bits. I haven't put them together yet. So it's a matter of putting some paint on the end pieces and fitting everything up and making 2 burners, or deciding on a design for 2 burners, which shouldn't be crazy difficult. They've just got methylated spirits burners that go in there, slide in. But I'm going to need an external tank because of the size of this boiler. The little tank that I did make is not big enough to run this until it gets empty. So this one's actually had a fire in it, and it's actually made steam, and we've actually run an engine with it. But the burner that I had just doesn't run long enough to really boil this from cold, which it really should, let alone give it a decent run. So that's where we're at with them. They're looking good, and I've got a good mind at some point to leave off this, especially if I can't get it bored, and get in and finish the 2 of these. And this is the problem. This is where I come unstuck. You see, I make 2 of something and it never gets finished. I shouldn't do this. It's a bad thing. Anyway, so this isn't a bad little boiler. It's actually got water in. I might go and empty that out in a minute. It probably shouldn't have. But pretty good design. 4 fire tubes in the bottom and decent safety valve. Very similar design to the little locos, and exactly the same as the 2 on the Kenny engines that I've built. Good design, that. And it's probably just going to have a rubber tube to an engine at this point from the back pipe. And we don't need a chimney because it's got these gaps here in the skirt to let the air circulate in and let the air in the side and out the top. So convection should be pretty good. It's just a matter of making burners, and I've got some ideas about that I never had a month ago, to be honest. Yes, made the safety valve. There's probably a couple of boilers up, a couple of videos up about safety valves. There's one for the Kenny traction engine that wasn't all that long ago on making safety valves. That's probably the last one I've done. There was one on doing the Kenneth Wells stationary engine too, has the same safety valve and how to make that. So yes, there's a couple of videos about them. That sounds like quite a project, Paddy. They're pretty simple. I've learned a lot over the last couple of burners that I've built, quite a lot about what makes them tick. So it's sort of a matter of putting some of those things into practice and ending up with something that's going to work. I'd also like some rubber hose for the spirit tank, but not sure where you even get that. Like proper rubber hose, Bunsen burner hose. Anyway, we've been an hour, which is pretty crazy. I don't know how that happened, but thanks for tuning in. It's good to see you. Pretty awesome to catch up and to hear a little bit about some of the projects that I see in the background going on. I think I'm going to call this. I'm going to go and grab some dinner and finish up for the night. It's hopefully next week we'll have some progress on one of these projects. It might be that one. It could be this one. It's probably unlikely to be the locomotives. Or it could be a tool making project. So 2876, a model engineer, has the Myrtle. Probably you're right. Goodness gracious. Craig, what year is that? Anyway, I'm going to call it. Take care, and be kind to each other. More soon.